Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stewart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in and listening, and a lot going on in the world. A lot of it not in the press, as Larry can tell you. We try not to do that, which was in the press, because we're trying to give news that we collect from around the world so that you get a better idea of what's really going on. And by the way, tomorrow night, Thursday, the 22nd, we're going to have Stan Deo on. And we're going to be talking about time warps, portals, doors, UFOs, arrival, et cetera, so that and earth changes. So that ought to really be an interesting show, and we hope you can all tune in to listen to it. Hi, Larry. How you doing?
Hey, Stewart. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We don't really have a lot of time tonight. I was going to read Isaiah chapter 17, but rather than read it, Damascus shall be a ruinous heap because of the children of Israel. And lo and behold, we're being told even by the Russians about Damascus being singled out, which kind of foreshadows whether it happens right away or a month from now. Doesn't really matter. We know it's coming, and we know it is on the horizon. And then, of course, we have Psalm 2. And it's the rulers and the rich men all gathered together and to bring about their new world order. Now, what's kind of interesting on this one, and Larry, I'd like a comment from you definitely on this one, Putin, about a year ago, talking to the press, said World War III basically was coming and it could not be stopped. And he was scolding the press for their attitudes. But you may not remember, folks, that Obama said the same thing. And I can't remember how long ago it was, but I remember it very distinctly. He said World War III was coming and he couldn't stop it. Why can't they stop it? Well, because they know that the rulers and the rich men, and they're planning it. Where do you want to start, Larry, on this? Maybe this world news, you brought it to my attention. Russia issues an ultimatum that if U.S. attacks Damascus, it will be the last thing you do. How are we doing on that? Have you got any more news? I mean, this is ominous because Putin warned the same thing, and this, I think, came from a general. But I hear that we're amassing, getting ready to strike.
Well, some of this news, Stewart, is, hard to vet. It's difficult to confirm totally. A lot of it is not in the mainstream news anywhere. Matter of fact, in America, you can kind of forget it. Mainstream news is all smoke signals out of Washington, D.C. And
yes.
But, there are a lot of reports that we can't confirm, but I'll having said that we're not able to confirm or vet all of this, there are a number of sources are beginning to zero in on a situation in the Middle East, and some of those sources are reporting that the UN has been warned to leave Syria immediately. The Brits, apparently, according to the reports, have sent in 2,300 staff officers and 10,000 troops to the U.S. base at Toft, and also the U.S. has reportedly a number of ships, and matter of fact, Marzulli posted it today with a map, and I reposted it. It says cruise missile strike groups are in the eastern Mediterranean, the Persian Gulf, and the Red Sea for a possible strike at Syria. It says U.S. Navy guided missile cruisers and Navy destroyers have formed into strike groups in the Middle East, and they appear to be pointed possibly at a strike in Syria. Now, at the same time, we've got the ground troops, we've got the Syrians, the Hezbollah, Iranians, Russians, all facing off with our troops that are still in Syria. and the Brits are apparently reinforcing them quickly. And there's a lot of fighting around Damascus at the moment, but Damascus possibly, according to the Russians, appears to be a imminent target of the U.S. Now, Stewart, and I'd like your opinion on this, we had also surmised over the last month or so on the reports, not in America, but in, across the ocean, the Middle East, we've had a number of reports, thousands of U.S. troops moving into Israel, and we've also supposedly have, ships off of Israel, and they have, basically peppered Israel with anti-missile batteries, U.S. batteries, and brought out all of the Israeli batteries, expecting some type of air attack. Now, we didn't know why for weeks now. We've been talking about these exercises over there. Is it possible, Stewart, and in your opinion, do you think possibly that a U.S. strike in Syria will bring a missile barrage on Israel itself?
Yes, I think it probably will. I think this is, which would in turn bring Israel to a massive, massive attack. Let's say the first attack by us with all of our ships, and by the way, England's involved in this as well. So it's kind of interesting. We could bombard Damascus, but that not be the total blow. It depends on how you read Isaiah 17, but it almost sounds like that's a nuclear attack. And we more or less just level Damascus, and it becomes literally a ruinous heap. And it sounds to me, if you read Isaiah 17 very closely, that the other Arab cities flee out into the deserts because they think they're next. And it's going to be a very quick but very deadly war, which then probably triggers either Daniel 8 or Ezekiel 38:39. I will put hooks into your jaw, speaking about Putin and his alliances to come down into the Middle East. So it sounds to me like this thing could break out at any time, and that also might involve Kim. Remember, Kim has some territory there, does he not, in Syria? And I know he supplied the Syrian nuclear reactor, was that in Iran or was that in Syria? That was in Syria, was it not? Where Israel has now admitted that he took it out, and that was North Korean.
Well, that's very interesting information, because today it says the Israeli military confirms it hit the Syrian nuclear site in 2007 attack northwest of Damascus, and even Prime Minister Netanyahu gave a statement today from the Foreign Ministry of Israel, said that his statement basically was that the Israeli military struck the 2007 Deir ez-Zor operation against the Syrian nuclear site that were set up and manned and operated by the North Koreans. So North Korea, we find out now why maybe North Korea zeroes in on Israel. Since 2007, they have a hate because Israel completely wiped out the nuclear facility North Korea was building in Syria. And, wow, there's a lot going on, Stewart.
Yeah, well, because we probably have a lot of North Korean troops, that would give Kim, the whiz kid there, an excuse to take on the United States. So this could erupt all over like the Armageddon script. China would then go into Taiwan, get rid of that. China would take on the South China Sea operations, our naval operations there. Then war in maybe Bosnia and that group. I mean, that's the Armageddon script. War everywhere, like your friend said he saw. Here's an interesting article, by the way, on war is on the horizon. Paul Craig Roberts. Now, this guy's insider. He knows a lot about what's going on, so people should pay attention to what he's saying. He says that Washington and his British vassal set a stage for testing whether Russia has a stomach for war. How else do we interpret the announcement of General Sergei Rutskoy, Chief of Operational Directorate of the Russian General Staff, and he's talking about the information they got on how we're training troops over there. And he more or less said what we started out with, that the ultimatum, it's going to be the last thing you do. Something brings the Soviets down upon Israel. It has to start sometime, and we are at that pivot year, 18. As I said on one of the other shows, look up the third day or 3 days in a Strong's Concordance so you can check out the verses, or maybe go to Bible Gateway or one of those things online and type it in. It's amazing what happens on the third day, which we could interpret like 3 years. And don't forget the 9/23 date that all of the elite spent millions, if not billions, of dollars programming everyone for 9/23/2015, or just a 9/23 date, and was what's going on all over the world now after the 2-year delay brought on by the sandstorm, which was divinely done. There's no question about that. They all said, even in Israel, boy, that's rare. So, yeah, we're at the point where war really should be breaking out any time, and we're waiting for it, but people should prepare for it as well. And here's another one I want to comment, Larry, on what you think about this one. What do they know that we don't? D.C. officials are flocking to doomsday camps. Now, what do you think of that one?
Well, I kind of correlate that. I don't know if you watched the news closely today, but Washington D.C. basically shut down because of, they say, this massive snowstorm that's come in, and of course they're trying to pass this bill to keep the government open by tomorrow evening, I guess, and then they're all going away for, I guess, the Easter holidays. Now, are they going to the holidays, or are they really going to a bunker or something? We don't know. The American people are finding out that their government for a number of years has not been looking out for them under Obama or even some previous president, and certainly now with Trump in office and a swamp literally surrounding him, the American people are in trouble, and Stewart, they just don't seem to click onto that concept.
Well, they not only don't click on it, they're not helping Trump at all, and Trump's not helping anybody either, because all these people that are so-called deep swamp, they're all still running around. Nobody's being arrested. Nothing's being done. All we have is the rhetoric of this investigation and that investigation. And really what we should be saying is we need to hire investigators to investigate the investigators, and we'd like an answer in about 20 years' time. Meanwhile, in that 20 years, nothing happens. And I'm beginning to think nothing is going to happen, and that this false flag may well be this Syrian conflict, so that it all orientates back to the wars, and all this stuff is just forgotten. And don't forget, there's a number of Christians that have been given visions, I guess one could say, that Obama is coming back. And it may be right after this war. They're going to blame, whatever happens, they're going to blame it on Trump. And if we get into a war or we lose some cities in this war, Trump will be blamed totally for it. He'll be impeached, if not thrown out, and they will bring Obama back. I'm convinced Obama is here for a reason. He's resurfacing, and I myself was told that he was Lucifer, and that was in a kind of a dream vision. I don't ask anybody to believe that it came from the Lord. Might have been my overactive imagination, but in that dream vision, I was teaching prophecy, and in walks Obama, big smile like he always has had. And I said, you know you're Lucifer, don't you? And he said, yes, I know. And then I woke up. So Whether that means anything or not, I don't know. But an awful lot of Christians have been told he is the lawless one.
Yeah. It's very interesting, Stewart. It's very interesting that at the present time, as we speak, there's more and more information coming out of Washington that Obama and Valerie Jarrett are basically running the anti-Trump shadow government that is running things basically in the mainstream media, in the Congress, and also our current government itself. And at the present time, Hillary Clinton is doing Obama's work over in Europe, speaking to European media, running Trump down and warning Europe that Trump is no good and should never have been the president. So the undermining is there. The treason against the sitting president of this country is in operation. And it appears from a lot of prophecies that Obama is staging to return as a ruler of this country, and the American people are comatose.
Yeah, I don't think anybody realizes how bad it will be under Obama, Hillary Clinton, Valerie Jarrett, and all those kind of people. The deep state, communist deep state, takes over and the killing fields start. The FEMA camps have not been disbanded by Trump. Trump is judgment. I know an awful lot of people think Trump is going to save America. No, he is not. He's not here to save America. He is here to judge America. And remember, judgment begins at the house of the Lord. And that has a double meaning and a very deep meaning, but I don't have time to get into that one. Here's a headline I want to comment from. India and Pakistan inching towards their final war. Now, somewhere in one of those extra biblical texts, I remember reading that World War III would start in an area no one suspected, but it was a war between India and Pakistan. They began lobbing nuclear missiles at each other, but it expanded and it expanded and expanded, and finally it came to the United States and Japan, and it was a bad thing. Isn't it strange we're getting these headlines now? And it's about nuclear. Both India and Pakistan have between 120 and 140 nuclear warheads. So, what do you think? Is that possible?
Well, I think it's very interesting, and one of the things that only in Middle East media would you find the information. The leader of Pakistan recently visited Netanyahu in Israel, and they signed a pact. India is now a signed pact individual with Israel. In other words, I suppose, and a matter of fact, Israel is providing a lot of munitions and war material to India. You've got Pakistan aligned with China, and of course North Korea and Iran and all the other groups, and matter of fact, there are reports that there's North Koreans in Pakistan operating now, and also Chinese. And we're not in there anymore. We're not in Pakistan particularly at all anymore. They basically turned against us. So with India now affiliated with Israel itself, once this thing starts, it's going to involve all of them.
Yep, which eventually involves us. I've often wondered if the so-called hooks in the jaws of Ezekiel 38:39 are not treaties, because if Russia has treaties with all of these nations down in through there, and they would be forced, even if they didn't want to, they would be forced to come to the defense of those nations, or Russia's word would be worthless. And I just don't imagine that's going to happen. So the hooks in the jaws, it's like the Lord himself that does it. He says, I put hooks into your jaws, and I'm going to bring you forth upon the mountains of Israel. And that's when that thing starts. I think we're very, very close to all of this. When you look at Israel, when you look at the Sanhedrin, when you look at the materials they've found so that they can begin their temple worship, when you look at the embassy move, when you look at Trump declaring Jerusalem the capital and all of this stuff going on, we have to be extremely close to Daniel's 70th week if we're not already in it and just don't know it. What do you think? I mean, I've kind of wondered. Ron Reese has done a lot of work on some of this stuff, and I think a lot of people think he's kind of an idiot because he keeps pointing to dates that never happen. But he has some extremely interesting information, and his last release really does make one wonder what's really going on when it comes to world affairs. And anyway, has Netanyahu made any comments about any of this?
Well, Netanyahu, as you well know, recently met with, the group, the Jewish group, over here in the U.S. and met with Trump at the White House, and then the follow-up visit was the Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who is still, I suppose, in Washington, and the whole focus of this White House meeting, is now a movement against aggression of Iran in the Middle East. So, the whole focus is basically, which is odd because Israel and Saudi Arabia and the U.S. moving their aggression, pushing on the Iranian proxies, which are all centered around, Israel, which is, we're talking about Lebanon and Syria and the whole region. And we can't leave Turkey out, Stewart. Turkey has already taken Afrin. That's the city of the Kurds. The Kurds are planning on a massive counterattack against Turkey. And if you'll remember, Turkey's already now affiliated itself basically with Iran and Russia against the U.S. and Israel. So what do you think?
Well, yeah, that I have always thought that was part of prophecy, because if you go into Ezekiel, you go into Isaiah, and you look at the nations that are named, and Turkey goes with the Soviets. And I use the term Soviets because that was perestroika and glasnost, and it was even, they all said this was just to fool the West into thinking that the Soviet Union had broken up. When in reality, if you pay any attention to the exercises, military exercises Russia does, all the former Soviet states are part of it. So that should be a clue. As you would say as a police detective, you got all these clues, all you got to do is start putting them together, and you come up with a picture. But Tom Horn said, Russia thinks U.S. planning to initiate burden of Damascus. So isn't that interesting? That's coming out just as Isaiah 17 that we've been warning people about to keep an eye on it. So here we go, I guess. Just a question of when the trigger gets pulled, right?
Well, that's very true. And then we've got this, I don't know what you would call it, with, North Korean delegation and U.S. delegation, South Korean delegation down in Finland, Helsinki, Finland, having negotiations for a so-called peace treaty, upcoming that they believe will be held in, Geneva, Switzerland. But you've got all of that, and Japan all along has warned that this Kim Jong-un negotiations and the Olympics and all of that was a feint. That was a smokescreen for something else that was being planned. So we're in great danger. I mean, the U.S. and all its allies really are in danger, and most of its allies are not smart enough to realize that. The NATO side out of Europe, they're not at all getting ready for something, and it appears that Putin is planning a surprise for Europe before this is over.
Oh, yeah, I think he is, too. And I think some of the prophecies from ancient times, like 100, 200 years ago, which to me are ancient times, but more or less indicated that there was a Blitzkrieg attack that took over Europe, and it was from the Soviets, that Putin all of a sudden strikes. But we got problems here in the United States. Here's a headline before we run out of time. California Democrat, there will be widespread civil unrest if Trump fires Mueller. Is that just kind of a cryptic warning that there is widespread civil unrest coming regardless of what Trump does? That's the way I read that.
There appears to be a plan involving Soros and those, and of course that dovetails right into Barack Obama. And, for civil unrest, that's part of their plan. That's part of the Democratic agenda for the coming days to reverse what Trump has already done to the nation. And that's what's interesting, Stewart. It doesn't appear that we're going to be able to change that. It appears that really trouble is beginning to come out of the woodwork, just like, the mass shootings and the school shootings and the bomb attacks in Austin, and, all of this beginning to happen. And this just dovetails right into Dan Gordon's book, Stewart, if you'll remember. And
yes.
I know we're running short on time, but if you'll remember, he warned about this southern border also, and it appears now that this omnibus bill that they're about to try to pass by tomorrow night is a Democratic bill that the Republicans have wrapped themselves around, which double crosses all of the conservatives. And it really shows that Pelosi and Schumer and Ryan and McConnell are all hooked together on the deep state to double-cross Trump.
Yep, and if Trump signs it, then he's double-crossed America. So, folks, keep your eyes on what's going on. Don't believe everything you read either, but do believe Psalm 2. Kim the Whiz Kid is not exempt. Donald Trump is not exempt. None of them are exempt. And it makes me wonder exactly what's going on. So, just got to have a heads up. Here's a final one. Russia warns China now has complete Soviet master file plan to destroy America from within. It's interesting to me, this is surfacing now, and of course it deals with the communist 45 rules of the communists, of which almost all of them have now been completed, and Obama and the rest of those people essentially are communists, socialists. And what we're involved in, as I've said many times before, is a socialist communist revolution. And very few people are saying that, but that's exactly what it is. And it's going to get really, really serious when you got the G5 wave coming, the advanced internet, cell phones, and all that. And when you tie all of that into China's social credit system, which I want to get into Friday night, I'm going to have an hour show on Friday too. And don't forget that we have Stan, and that is going to be a fascinating. It always is with Stan, and it's really going to be something to listen to, because we're going to be talking about time. And I guess my final comment would be that people do not realize that this space-time continuum is connected very, very closely to true salvation. And the statements of the Lord about a door and how he said he was the door. He's talking about a portal. Larry, any final comments?
Yeah, I find it really telling that you're talking about the Communist 45-step plan, and we're now sitting under President Donald Trump, which is number 45.
Yes. Isn't that fascinating? Synchronicity, is that what they call that? I don't know. Folks, really, time is short, very short. There's going to be some huge surprises. And I can't tell you that the rapture is going to take place, but it wouldn't surprise me either way. It could happen just about any time now. I'll try to get into Ron Reese, too, a little bit, and what he's actually discovered. It is absolutely fascinating. Not telling anybody to believe it, but it's fascinating. Anyway, thanks a lot, Larry, for coming on. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Do tune in tomorrow night. We're going to do a big roundtable with Stan. And everybody, good night, and take care of yourselves.